This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, it's my great pleasure to welcome into the studio Steve Swart, an ACDP Member of Parliament, and also he serves on the Justice Portfolio Committee, and we're going to be talking about that committee. So welcome to the show once again, Steve. Great to have you here.
Thank you, Errol, and good evening to your viewers.
Now, Steve, we're going to talk about an issue that is all over the media, and many people don't understand what happened with the amendment to the Sexual Offences Act. A couple of the provisions were struck down, which in effect made it legal now for children in the age group 12 to 16 years old to have sex legally. So it was decriminalised. But there was a whole process that took place before this arrived at Parliament and for your portfolio committee, the Justice Portfolio Committee, to deal with it. Take us through the steps. What happened there?
Well, firstly, just from our side, to emphasize that we do not agree with teenage sex. We believe in abstinence from sex pending until marriage. And so we were totally opposed to this concept. However, when we passed the legislation, we criminalized the sex with teenagers from the age of 12 to 16. That was across political lines. The Constitutional Court...
If I can just come in here now. Yes. So the Sexual Offences Act, before this law was amended, Parliament worked on a law criminalizing sexual relations between children from 12 years old and upwards. Any kind of penetrative sex, kissing, fondling, all these kind of things. I remember the media making fun of it. So that was as the law stood, and this is the law that was challenged by this organization, the Teddy Bear Clinic.
It was a very comprehensive and very progressive law to deal with a wide range of sexual offences. As you know, sexual offences are rampant in society.
That's right.
So it really dealt with in depth, and it was a very good law. One of the issues we struggled with is what do you do with consensual sex? Our courts aren't even able to deal with rapes and murders at the moment. So what do you do with consensual sex? So we decided to criminalise it in the ages of 12 to 16 years of age, with both the teenagers being criminalised. And that then was taken to the Constitutional Court by various NGOs. In this case, it was the Teddy Bear Clinic. And the court then struck down that particular provision, amongst other provisions, and said that in its view, the evidence before it did not prove that by criminalizing teenage sex, we are in fact deterring children from engaging in sex, and that it is unconstitutional. So it was not Parliament itself that established this law or that initiated this law. It came directly from the Constitutional Court.
Now, okay, if I can just come in there, the Teddy Bear Clinic is an organization that works with children at risk, vulnerable children that's been abused. Their argument was that prosecuting a child that is caught in the act of sexual relations with another child in that age group, 12 to 16, is secondary victimization. And the Constitutional Court agreed with that. And it's based on a number of things that happened. One of it is a young girl, you know about this case, that was caught, that was prosecuted, and was ashamed of what she did, and she committed suicide.
Absolutely, and that incident weighs heavily on our conscience. And we need to understand that in certain cases, teenagers do have sex. So what do we do? How do we deal with that? And in that particular case, at that stage, we decided that we should divert away from the criminal justice system, but even the court said that is not sufficient. And in the case that you cite, the police went and arrested these teenagers that engaged in consensual sex. Remember, if it's not consensual, it is still rape. Consensual sex, brought them before the criminal justice system, and that young girl was so traumatized that a year later she committed suicide. So we need to ask ourselves the question, is the criminal justice system the best way to deal with this? Surely parents, surely families, surely the church must play a very important role. And I do appreciate that there's been public outrage about this, but we need to understand that it was as a result of a constitutional court order instructing Parliament to tidy up this legislation. One of the aspects which you point out in the media, they spoke about hugging and kissing, that needed to be tidied up, because in terms of the definitions, in order to bring all this into the ambit where there is non-consensual aspects, we had to tidy that up. Also the aspect of the
Steve,
yes.
Would you agree that the law wasn't really a good law? It wasn't drafted well enough, and that's why it gave the Constitutional Court the ammunition to strike it down? Because one of the things that is required by the law before it was struck down was that if a child came to their father or mother and said, look, I had sex, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, they are then compelled by the legislation to report their child to the police.
Absolutely. And so, yes, there were some challenges when we defined and when we drafted the law. Bearing in mind, you've got the equality clause that says we are equal before the law. So how did we deal with both consensual teenagers? Do you only charge the older one? What about the younger one? So we were pleased that the court gave us clarity in that regard, that there was no reason to charge both children, and in fact that it's not necessary to charge at all. There must be other avenues from state, such as social development intervention, rather than sending children to jail for engaging in teenage sex. But the point you make is absolutely correct. Where a child commits a mistake, makes a mistake, engages in teenage sex, comes to you as a parent or a teacher or a pastor for help. At the moment, you as parent, teacher, pastor, social worker are obliged to report her to the police or him. Now, with it being decriminalised, you can counsel, you can assist that child, and also that child's name will not go on the criminal offences register for the rest of their life. Secondly, the child will not have to go through diversion programs where they sit with hardened sexual offenders. So on the one side, there are benefits. Obviously, from the other side, our moral outrage at that decriminalisation
that's what I wanna,
is to be understood.
That's what I want to talk about, and I think that's where most South Africans are. The outrage, I've done several radio interviews, and we've spoken to people on the streets, and the vast majority of South Africans are outraged about this bill. The fact that it's been decriminalised, it's sending out a message to young people that it's okay to engage in sexual activity between the ages of 12 and 16. So that's the message we're sitting at. Now, most people don't understand all the nuts and bolts of the legislation, how it went wrong, what happened at the Constitutional Court. They think Parliament just decided to come up with a law and decriminalise sex for children in this age group. That isn't the case. You know that, I know that. And so what we're talking about here is trying to help our viewers understand the complexities of this bill, what the Justice Portfolio Committee had to grapple with. I made a submission. Family Policy Institute made a submission to the Justice Portfolio Committee on this issue, but I still understand the complexities of what is going on. The ACDP, I know, have said this repeatedly, and so do I. We are outraged about the law. It's a bad law. It's a bad judgment. We don't agree with it. We're sending out altogether the wrong message, but we have to deal with this. And I think what is happening now, Steve, is that because Parliament has done what it's done, because the Constitutional Court has done what it's done, it's now taking this issue and putting it back into the ambit of families and the church. What are we doing about the growing numbers of young people that's engaging in early sexual activity, the implications of that, the soaring rates of teenage pregnancies, child abuse, all these kind of things? These are the implications. What are we as a society and a church going to do about this? Are we just going to be outraged at Parliament and the government and do nothing about this? What is our role?
Well, absolutely. And when you look at various pieces of legislation, such as the abortion legislation, a child at the age of 9, 10 can have an abortion without parental consent. Right. Contraceptives being given to children. Now, this amendment bill, other bills allowing pornography and that. So we've got to understand that the primary place for us to teach solid Christian values lies in the family And then, of course, in the church, other faith-based organizations, and we need the NGOs, we need society to take up its role. We cannot allow the state to dictate to us what our moral values are.
That's right.
Now, in this situation, of course, we're talking about decriminalisation. The court made it very clear that it is not saying that children should be permitted to engage in sex. What it is saying is whether it is constitutionally permissible to criminalise teenage consensual sex. That is what it said, and it said it is not constitutionally permissible. It then instructed Parliament. Parliament was bound by that decision, bound by the rule of law. Yes, we as the ACDP expressed our objections to it. Had the bill come to a vote, we would have not supported it because of our moral and Christian standpoint. However, we need to understand the rule of law applies, and that when the Constitutional Court instructs Parliament, it has to comply with that order.
Here's another issue that is a matter of confusion with people. Does the amendment bill now that decriminalizes sex in that age group, 12 to 16 years old, does this mean that the age of consent has now been lowered to 12 years old?
It does not mean that. In fact, we from the ACDP side suggested an amendment to this bill to make it very clear that the age of consent remains 16 years. No adult can have sex with a child under the age of 16.
They will be prosecuted.
They will be prosecuted. Children, however, that engage in sex between the ages of 12 to 16 will not be criminally charged. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that it is now being legalized. It means it is being decriminalized. So it is a strange legal term. As a lawyer, I've even struggled with that term. All it means is children will not be criminally charged. Now, yes, that is regrettable, as we've pointed out, that it might send out a strong message. So that's why we from the ACDP side asked and the committee to insert a clause in the preamble to say that there are inherent risks of teenage sexual involvement, such as teenage pregnancies, such as HIV/AIDS, such as emotional and psychological trauma. That is inserted in the bill. We also wanted a clause saying that it's 16 years of age. That's the age of consent. Adults having sex with children will be criminally prosecuted. That bill, that aspect is still being looked at. So we tried to improve it. We did improve it by removing the issues relating to the sexual register, clarifying the hugging and kissing aspect, that will not be criminally charged. So there are certain positive aspects, but the message that is being sent out is regrettable that it is now open season, children can engage in sex, and that clearly is not what is intended, and we need to make that message very clear. The Constitutional Court did not say that children should engage in teenage sex.
Now, I think the problem with the passing of this amendment and decriminalizing, because in effect that's what's happened by decriminalizing sex between teenagers in the age group 12 to 16, other mechanisms haven't been put into place. For example, it is now decriminalized. That's it. But what if two children at the age of 12 or 13 are caught in the act? What other mechanisms have been put in place to deal with that situation?
Yes.
Because we don't want to encourage it, we don't want to send out the message, we're condoning it, we want to know children. There are huge implications in early sexual activity, and you mentioned some of that is the soaring rates of abortions, young girls having abortions, teen pregnancies, all of the other issues. So the other mechanisms that we expect government to put in place to deal with this hasn't been done. So now it shifts. Again, I'm going to say that it shifts to the family. It shifts to the church to play its role. But here's the problem. We stand with another problem in this country, is that only 35% of children live with both biological parents. So most kids now are living in single-parent homes, and a lot of them are not living with parents at all. So who is going to instill these values and teach them and guide them?
Absolutely, and that's where we as Christians can play a very important role. The church needs to take its stand now and assist those dysfunctional families. That's the first point. Secondly, if there is a need for the state to intervene, then, as this court has pointed out, it can't be from a criminal justice perspective where you send children to jail for engaging in consensual sex. Rather, you bring a social worker in to establish, is this a child in need of care? have a look at the family circumstances, look in terms of the Children's Act, have a Children's Act inquiry in the magistrate's court where we have a social worker establishing what is going on, why is this child promiscuous. So this bill in a certain way assists caregivers, because if a teacher at school or a pastor finds out that there's a problem at home, they can report it to the social development department, where they can then, as social workers, investigate this case, as opposed to the policeman arriving at the school and arresting that child in front of all the kids.
Look, it is counterproductive. It's not going to work. If we're arresting children and sending them through the court system and the criminal justice system, it's not going to help them. And we want to help kids. And we know that a lot of the dysfunctionality with children in this country is a result of family breakdown, family dysfunctionality. That is a reality in South Africa that I don't think we are grappling with yet. We know the statistics, but nothing really adequate and substantial is being done about it. And I think this is a great opportunity for the church when you talk about social workers. You know, the church could have come into partnership with government and say, look, when children are caught in this act, send them to us. We want to walk with them, we want to counsel them, we want to help them, realizing and understanding they come out of a dysfunctional home. Because children are engaging in sex and doing all kinds of things. I mean, the red lights must go off that, look, this child must come out of a place where they're not getting the proper guidance and values. And so we as the church and other, social institutions can help and provide that. Because there are a lot of kids and there are a lot of problems with children in South Africa today. Apart from the sexual activity, there's the drug addiction, there's the crime and violence, there's the gangsterism, younger children getting involved in gangs. So the problem is there, but I think if we as Christians, Steve, are putting our reliance on government to sort out all these problems, I think we're missing it.
Absolutely, and we have to understand that government should only come in as a last resort. We need, as you've correctly pointed out, firstly as families, as parents, to take up our role, the fathers and mothers in the household. Secondly, as churches, to come and assist those dysfunctional families. And then you have your NGOs, your traditional authorities. The state you would want only to come in as a last resort to deal with these situations. And so yes, it's a wonderful challenge, a wake-up call for South Africa to be praying into the situation, for the churches to be assisting, to be looking out in your communities, what's going on around you. You know, at the moment, we can't even prosecute the most horrendous rapes and murders. And we can't expect our police and criminal justice system to try to investigate and deal with teenage consensual sex now, whilst we're not condoning this bill at all. That was the implication, and it was preventing a lot of children from obtaining help. One example, you were at the public hearings. We had a lady came and she had an adult had sex with her when she was 13. And this traumatized her. Now that's statutory rape. Under the age of 16, it's statutory rape. She never ever laid a charge. But I put it to her, I said, look, if it was you were 13 at the time, if it wasn't an adult, but a person of the age of 15, you would have been charged as well. She said, well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, this bill must be amended. So that just illustrates the complexity of this bill. But we need to send a very clear message out that from a Christian perspective, teenage sex is unacceptable. We need to abstain before marriage, and that will prevent HIV/AIDS, teenage pregnancy, and the emotional and psychological trauma that is caused by engaging in teenage sexual activities.
Steve, you're 100% right, but that message that children engaging in premature sexual activity, teenagers, there's huge implications for that. But that is a message of values to help our young children understand the decisions they make, what are the outcomes of that later, how that impacts on their lives and their futures. That is our message. That's the church. We got to get that message out. We have to repair the moral fabric of this society. And I think because morality has declined as much as it's done over the past 20 years in South Africa, we're seeing what we're seeing in society today. And we thank God for the work you're doing and the ACDP in Parliament, your great work on the Justice Portfolio Committee, the voice you are for biblical values. But again, this is a complex issue we're dealing with, and we need all hands on deck. We need all sectors of society to join hands to help our children. There's a crisis out there. We need the church to come to the fore. We need government. We need the private sector. We need schools, education, everybody to get involved with this, because there is a problem out there. But Steve, thank you once again for coming onto the show and for clarifying these issues.
Thank you very much, Errol. It's a pleasure.
I don't think it's a good thing at all. It's going to bring more immorality to our nation. It's not good. I don't agree with it. You see, the kids should be kids up to the stage where they are allowed to do anything with their lives. So 12-year-old, 16-year-old or 15-year-old, definitely no.
I think it's actually pathetic. I do think so, because at the age of 12, no young person is capable enough of making their own decisions when it comes to sexual relations. And I don't think it's right. Maybe physically the child might look grown enough, but I don't think they are grown enough to have sexual intercourse at such a young age.
I just think that why does government do that? And it's
At a loss for words for why they would do it.
really, I'm dumbfounded now.
Okay, personally, I do not agree with 12-year-olds having sex. First of all, they're not ready mentally and physically. They're still developing. They're still going through puberty. So I think that the legal age should stay 16 and 18 and above. Because if they have sex at 12 years old and they fall pregnant, how are they going to support the children, first of all? And are they going to be able to survive like pregnancy, STIs and all that? So I do not agree with it.
And wow, I'm lost for words. What is this government coming to?
The child is a child. At 12 years old, you could call them a toddler, not a teenager yet, a toddler. You can call them a toddler. They're not there yet.
A negative effect, because what it's telling children is that they can do as they please, and they don't have to regard their parents in anything. And we're already having a problem in our societies as it is. So, nope, that's a no-no for me. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Well, the thing is, with that saying, for me, it's the economics was going to be probably going to go down as well, due to that fact, because then there's a lot of people, a lot of kids going to be pregnant, and there's going to be like guys that's going to try their luck also at any time point to actually make them pregnant. So I really think it is quite wrong.
Well, speaking for myself, I was raised in a good home, so I know right from wrong. And I can't say my parents never taught me when was the appropriate age to have sex. But well, for me personally, for myself, I never felt like sex was the appropriate age to have at 12 years old.
So you don't agree with it? Okay.
Absolutely not. I do not agree with it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the program. It's a great privilege to invite Michelle Links back into the studio to help me discuss the issues of the amendment of the Sexual Offences Act. Now, in the previous segment, Steve Swart, the ACDP Member of Parliament, helped us understand the nuts and bolts, why this legislation came about, how it came about, the fact that the Constitutional Court ruled and struck down certain portions of the Sexual Offences Act that decriminalise sexual relationships between children in the age group 12 to 16 years old. But Michelle is a pastor and also a mother of 2 young children. So, Michelle, when you first heard this news that sexual relations between children in this age group 12 to 16 years old was legalized, what was your initial reaction?
I was grieved.
Yeah.
And many other moms that I know are just as upset because they're already having challenges with their children. So this is just another thing that they have to be challenged with. And the Bible says, do not stir up love before it's time. And what are we doing? We're saying it's okay. Stirring up those emotions. A 12-year-old cannot deal with the emotions that come along with sexual activity. You know, the Bible also says, train up a child in the way they should go. What are we teaching our kids? How are we training our children? Sarah, I was grieved, I was angry, and I was upset.
Now, as you said, a lot of people feel exactly the same way as you do. I've done a number of radio debates with radio commercial and Christian radio channels across the country. And when people phone in, their reaction to this is the same as yours. They grieve, they're shocked, they're outraged. How could this happen in our country? So people share that, and you can see by the vox pops that we did, going onto the street, the Watchmen on the Wall guys went on the street with the cameras and just asking people at random, what is your response? And the response has been the same like yours. But we've got to understand, Michelle, that this wasn't an idea that Parliament came up with. They drafted a bad law. That law was challenged by the Teddy Bear Clinic, went to the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court struck it down. Parliament now had to comply with the ruling of the Constitutional Court and decriminalise sex in this age group. But the unfortunate consequence is, even if it's not intended, is that it now sends out a green light to children all over this country, that children in that age group, 12 to 16 years old, it's okay for you to have sex, because what we legalize, we make acceptable.
Yeah, and the consequences are endless. They are destructive, leads to teenage pregnancies, abortion, prostitution, fatherlessness. So it's all things that we are struggling with. So what's going to happen with that?
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the church. Yeah. Because what happened now with this legislation that's being passed, it's saying that government doesn't know how to deal, that's my reading, government doesn't know how to deal with the situation. In South Africa, currently, thousands and thousands of children are at risk. We just look at the stats, child-on-child sexual abuse, children getting involved in sexual activity, children making videos of themselves engaged in sexual activity and sharing it with their friends, teen pregnancies, teen abortions. All of these issues is telling us there's a crisis with children. Yes. And so government is passing legislation to try to deal with this. And obviously they're failing because the legislation is not going to correct the problem. Now it moves into the hands of the church, into the ambit of the family. And when we come to the family, we have other complications. The fact that there's only 35% of children live with both biological parents. Most of the kids in this country live with one or other parent, and a lot of them now don't live with any parents. So parental guidance, when people are saying, no, the parents must guide the children, but a lot of children don't even have parents. So now it's almost like, okay, so here's the church. God has called us to be salt and light. God has called us to proclaim truth, to teach and guide children. So you're a pastor.
Yes.
What should we be doing, Michelle?
Implementing programs. As you were speaking, I was thinking of something called Choose Purity. Educating our teenagers.
Is this being run in the church?
Yes.
Choose Purity.
You can run it, programs, you can run it in the church. I would recommend that. Choose Purity, make public declarations, educate the kids, because my people perish for lack of knowledge.
That's right.
So tell the girls and young boys about the consequences if you do go that route. It's so important. I would like to encourage parents to have an open relationship with their children so that they can trust. There's a trust relationship. So often kids feel fearful of speaking to their moms and dads. So we also need to educate moms and dads, to have a loving, open relationship, and so that.
Now that's a key. If I can just come in there, Michelle, that is a key point, because I looked at the research and the kind of debates that has been going on in Parliament and with other governmental institutions and civil society institutions, and they're saying that parents are failing in their duty to educate their children. Okay, now that is the one issue. I think the problem is that the parents themselves don't have the education. That's why they're not educating their children. So if we can take a step back and say, before we get to the kids, how do we help parents understand the implications of what is happening in our country, what's happening to children, and their responsibility to educate and train up children in the way they should go, but not only their children, other children as well. How do we do that?
Yeah, and I deal with kids. I was running a kids department. I deal with youth. I deal with young girls. And the one thing that they feel comfortable with me, because I'm real, I'm open, I don't get too surprised, but when they speak to me, so Parenting skills, some of us lack parenting skills, and I would say draw along your leaders, draw along your pastors, ask them to help, ask them to sit in with your child if you do not have that skill. Ask for assistance. There is ways and means around to it, but definitely we cannot sweep it under the carpet. It is real. If you're not going to educate your child, someone is going to do that.
Someone else is going to do that. Absolutely right, because that's the role of the media. And the liberal media is pushing out this message that, sexual relationships is okay. Yeah. There are liberal groups out there saying, well, children are sexual. And, touching and kissing, it's all a normal, development, part of normal development. True. And sex is part of a normal development. So children begin to have sex at a young age. It's okay, it's normal, and it's developmental. But the Bible teaches us something completely different. Mm-hmm. The Bible teaches us that children at young ages should be focusing on other things, developing their minds and their education and their value systems before they get into the place of making decisions that could, impact on their lives like sexual relations does. In our country today, you have to be 18 years old to get a driver's license. You have to be 21 to buy a home. True. Now, they're even discussing in Parliament now increasing the age from 18 to 21 for kids to drink alcohol. Yeah. Because young children drinking alcohol is becoming a huge problem. So all of those issues, you have to be a certain age, but when it comes to sex, 12 years old, it's a fine, it's legal, and apparently children know what they're doing when they make the decisions. How can a 12-year-old understand the decision they're making with their consent to sex?
They're only going to puberty phase. They're only going into that stage. How do they have the willpower or the knowledge or the skill to be able to make a decision? They're still a child. I was thinking about role models. We have so many secular role models out there.
That's right.
And we need to educate the kids and saying that, that is not a role model for you. Being promiscuous, doing all of those things, it's not a role model, because they're exposed to television, magazines, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. And parents, once again, you can put restrictions, put on those restrictions so that your kids are not exposed to all that sorts of media, because nowadays parents just give the kids whatever they want.
The struggle is we can do that in our church buildings and in our programs, but how do we get that out to greater society? And the one way I know is through the education department. But then, government they're always very reluctant to invite the church into the schools to teach values, because they say you're pushing your religion or a particular faith and all of that. So they're against that. But there must be ways around it.
Yeah, I would not compromise. I was just thinking about, not compromising for what you stand for. And sometimes us as believers, we compromise our values. That's right. And we withhold certain messages, the message of truth, the message of purity, the message of the Word of God. So often we withhold that. I say, don't compromise. Be the light and the salt. You've been called to make a difference out there. Youth programs, do not compromise. Church, don't compromise, because the world out there needs you. And we have great favor. If we just put it out there, we have favor. Don't hold back. Go into the corporates, go into government, ask.
That's an important point, Michelle, because I get that a lot. People say that in the school system, there's so much dysfunctionality that the school doesn't know how to deal with it, to address it, because, let's be fair, the teachers are there to educate, to teach, writing and arithmetic and all of those kind of things, not to try to help children with their psychological and emotional problems. Mm-hmm. They can't be doing all of that. And so somebody else has to step into that space to help these kids. But now we've got the issue of religion, and government doesn't want religion in. And there's other people coming in and promoting all kinds of other ideas. But the big problem that we're facing in this country is family breakdown and family dysfunctionality. That's why we have so many troubled children. That's why we have so many young children getting involved in sexual activity, teenage pregnancies, abortions, crime, violence, alcoholism, gangsterism, prostitution. There are 13-year-old girls standing in our streets right here in Cape Town. And the question again is, what is happening when a society stands by while all of this is happening to its future generations? What kind of a future do we have? So the question, Michelle, is do you think the church is doing enough?
No.
That's the short answer, no. We can be doing more.
I don't think we're doing enough. I think we can do so much more. I think when the church is unified, we can be so much more powerful.
Do you think it's because we failed to recognize, the church failed to recognize that we have a huge crisis and a growing crisis with children, younger and younger children? We failed to see that.
Not all churches. There are some churches that are quite active and involved and do outreach and want to help and feed and educate. But there are some that feel that it's not their responsibility. So they take a step back and they say, but it's government. Government should sort it out.
But that's the problem, Michelle. You know why this is frightening? And I spoke in the previous segment with Steve Swart. If we keep on handing all of these things over to government, government must do it, government must do it. Pretty soon, government is controlling everything, your family, education, and then government sets the parameters of morality. They decide what is right and wrong. They control everything. And later on, then we complain about that. We say, but we ourselves relinquish all these responsibilities. We gave it over to government. They say, you control everything. We give it to you. The things that we're supposed to be doing, government should do. Yeah. Because it's easier to just hand something over. And then, of course, when government goes overboard and messes up everything, then we blame them. But we want to talk more about this, and we want to talk about particularly the family and its role in strengthening children and helping kids and restoring the moral fiber of our nation. I think we have to start with the family. But we'll come back after the break. Okay. We have to go to a quick commercial break, and when we come back, more with Pastor Michelle Links.
It does interfere with our value system, and it teaches them the wrong value system because they're not going to have respect for sex and sex in a relationship later, because it is, if it's allowed at 12 already, what does the child know at 12 about life in total?
I don't agree with it, but I also think, as I said, we should look at the time, because you see, like 10 years ago, things that were happening 10 years ago, that's not how we live right now. So I just think we need to teach kids how to be safe, how to condoms and all that,
And they're soon going to have condoms in high school right now. So saying it's legal to have sex in school and anywhere else, So the rate of pregnancy and teenage pregnancy, it's going to be high. And dropouts out of school, they're all going to be high. So it's just craziness.
I mean, we're just destroying all the values that our parents and grandparents taught us, as adults. And I wouldn't like to see my daughter or my son, as a 14-year-old, 12-year-old, having talks about sex and consent to having sex at that age. So that's my opinion.
If you're 12, 16, I mean, you're not even above 18, they're very young. So I guess it will give them a bad influence for the government to tell them that they are allowed to do so, because it's really not right.
Just straightforward, too young to make such a decision.
Well, I mean, the underprivileged communities are very, the problem is education, that they don't have education. So if they just know they can have sex at that age, they're just bound to make terrible mistakes. And in the long run, it's going to mean overpopulation to a greater extent, and more crime, more poverty, more suffering. So it's just a terrible idea for everybody.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
I still feel that they are still have to be under protection of the parent, and I mean this is really pulling really the control of the parent over the child out of hand, and this is why our children are such in a rebellious attitude towards the parents because of the rights that they has been given by the government.
Young sex, children making sex at the age of 16 and 12, that's very bad, man.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed in this country. You know, our hope now is in the next generation. You know, if the next generation is going to be taught by about sex in the age of 12 and 16, that's the last thing that this government is supposed to be doing. This is not right.
Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Pastor Michelle Links, my co-anchor on the show for a long time. She's taken a short break, but she's back now. And we're talking about the recent amendment to the Sexual Offences Act that effectively decriminalised sex between children in the age group 12 to 16 years old. Now, Michelle, in the previous segment, and we see from what people are saying on the streets, is people are horrified, people are shocked, but I think the major concern amongst people in South Africa across the board, it doesn't matter what walk of life, what race group you are, everybody seems to be concerned with the moral decline in South Africa. That's where people are saying, look, we understand this is happening. Why it is happening? Because morality is at its lowest in South Africa. We're not imparting values to children, to people. There's just a breakdown in values and morality in South Africa, and we're beginning to see what we see now in our nation with abortions, increase in teenage abortions, teenage pregnancies. All of these issues is a result of moral breakdown. You agree with that?
True, I see it. It's evident wherever you go. You can see it in the media, you see it at schools, you see it even in the church sometimes you see it because they have that outside influence. But I believe that we can make a change.
Yes, we can.
And I believe that you can make the change that you want to see. So don't ignore it, deal with it, do something about it. Even if you're changing one life at a time, even if you're taking 5 girls at a time, those 5 girls can help another 5 girls, the next 5 girls, and you can change a generation. So never think that you cannot do anything. Don't think you as an individual, what can I do? No, you can do something about it.
I sometimes think it's just that people don't understand the gravity of the situation. That's what I believe. It's that I see it because we're dealing with these issues every day. We have to see the research and the outcomes of all, what government puts out there, the breakdown of the family. It's startling. If you look at the numbers, the fact that only 35% of children live with both biological parents, while the rest, live in single-parent homes. Fatherlessness, you mentioned that. That is such a huge issue, especially here in the Western Cape. Children growing up without fathers, without having that authority figure in their life, without having the boundaries, are not just running out and doing whatever they want to do. They are mothers, single mothers, doing a great job, excellent job of raising their children on their own, but no matter how hard they work and do, they can never be a father. And children need a father.
There's a missing link there. And the kids grow up being unstable, low self-image. They never received a fatherly love, which is so important. They become rebellious. They're going into gangsterism. Girls never received the love from the father. They find love in other forms, other ways.
That's right.
And the mom, it's so difficult for her to be 2 parents to fulfill both roles. It is challenging. But like we said, the church can play that role. We can have a single parents group. You can have a group for kids that don't have a father or mother. You can be that support. We can do so much more.
Now, typically churches would do this with people that are in the church, that are members of the church. So if you're coming into our church, we can help you, we can do these things. But what we need now, Michelle, and it's becoming very evident, is that church has to get out of the building, because that's where the problem lies. It's in society. It's all the misinformation, the distortions, the undermining truth that is just harming parents, it's harming marriages, it's harming families, and it's harming children. So we need to get this information out to broader society. But now, how does the church do that? Because do we go out and hire halls and have sort of meetings, invite people, talk about the issues we want to hear from people, and we give them sort of free training in parenting, free training in helping children understand the implications of the choices they make, where it leads to, how to make good choices. Is it possible for the church to do that?
Yes, I do think it's possible. All things are possible. I think you could start in your community where you are at, and that's what we could do. Send out flyers, put it in each post box, create an awareness, put up notifications, and I think the community needs that. I think they would want that, and we can help the community. What if you change a community, you change a city, you change a nation?
That's right. Getting out, it's easier said than done. There's so many churches, big churches in our country with huge buildings. You drive around and you see this. I think that the key now is for the church to get the message outside and finding ways to do that. Do you know of ministries that can help churches, give them the information they need? Because not everybody has all the information on how to train kids. There are ministries that's doing a great job doing that. And the one thing about the church that I've got to mention is there's a church just about everywhere.
Absolutely.
Every little dorpy,
Yeah.
every place you go to, there is a church. And that gives us a great advantage in that every little place there's a church that can reach out to their community. So it doesn't mean like one church has to travel all over the country. If the church is everywhere and the church can get and reach people, and I think it's the most effective at doing that. But are there ministries that have tools and have material that can help churches so that they can go out and do this work of informing and educating and helping people understand the choices we're making in this country? Currently, it's not working for us. We have to change course. We have to begin to strengthen our moral value system in this country. We need to restore the family. We need to help children understand the choices they make. All of those things, who can help us with that?
I believe that the church that might not have all the resources, they might not have everyone that can assist, but there's definitely ministries out there. There's places that we can reach out to. I mean, we don't have to do everything. We can hold hands and draw from one another.
Partnerships, yes.
Partnerships, and that's why I said in the beginning, sometimes we're an island on our own. We don't want to reach out and ask for assistance. So definitely we can get in people to come and educate us. I remember when you came to minister at one stage at our church, people were overwhelmed because things that you were mentioning, they did not know.
That's it.
So
That's
our
the
people,
issue.
our people perish for lack of knowledge. There's many people they don't even know about the bill that's been implemented. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
They don't know, and kind of like they don't want to know. Some of them don't want to know because they don't want to deal with the issues.
I find that a lot, Michelle, that when I travel around the country and speak about these issues, people are shocked and horrified when they hear this. But then later on, they're just shocked and horrified. They don't know what to do about it. And I think a lot of the work we do here with Watchmen on the Wall and our radio programs is to get that information out to people, to equip them so that they know. Because the Bible says, my people perish for lack of knowledge, not lack of faith.
True.
Or lack of finances,
Yes.
but lack of knowledge. So God is trying to tell us something here. And the more we equipped and the more knowledgeable we are on these issues, I suppose the more effective we can be. And again, the church is, ideally located all over South Africa in every community. I think about people like Hetty Brits, Hetty
Yes.
Brits. She's got this training program where she trains parents how to be good parents. Kind of things you got to look out for your, we need those kind of resources. We
Yes.
need Hetty Brits to go to all of the churches and equip the churches so that they can go out and do the work. So you talk about partnerships, I think that is the answer.
You could get focus on the family.
Focus on the family, but there are many doing great work, but the problem is they're isolated. They little organizations doing work here. Can you imagine if the Church of Jesus Christ came together and took their resources and put it together and said, look, we have a strategy. We're going to empower you. We're going to train our people, get Hetty to come in, train up our people and send them out. Can you imagine the impact we could do?
And I think the parents would be grateful for that. Children would be grateful because, like I said earlier, not many parents have the skill or the knowledge or the wisdom. Some of them had their daughter or their son at a young age. They're a single mom. They don't know how to deal with it. They are just getting by and they're challenged. They don't have anyone they can trust. They don't have anyone that they can talk to. It's real issues.
It is.
And we need help. There's a cry for help.
That's the key. People need help. They need information. And we have it in the Church of Jesus Christ across this country. We have talented people, talented ministries doing wonderful work, but a lot of people don't know about it. And we want to get that information out because we impart values to our children. We don't teach it. You know, it's caught, not taught.
Yes.
And so children look at their parents and their behavior, how they treat each other.
Absolutely.
I was telling my wife the other day, I was telling Arlene that, you know, our love for God and our dedication to God is what our children and our grandchildren see. And the way we love God and honor God, they're going to love God and honor God. If we don't, if we lackadaisical about and, you know, relaxed about, you know, church and serving God and all of that, we pass that on to our children and our grandchildren. And then one day we want to complain that our children is not, you know, and it's because of us.
Yeah, think about the next generation. What are you imparting to the next generation? Your child can pick up, when there's no love, when there's argument, when there's fighting, they can pick up that. So, you know, educate your children, show them the way. It says, train up a child in the way they should go. And when they're older, they will not depart from it.
A lot of good young people doing good things, and we must try to get that out and help our children understand there is a better way of living.
Yeah, and I believe that we must be real, you know, be on the child's level. You know, sometimes we can be very spiritual, especially in church, we can be spiritual and have a lot of scriptures and all of that, but be real with the child. Child needs to know that I can trust you. Do you understand what I'm going through?
Yes.
Can you relate to what I'm going through? So be very real with the...
You see, mothers understand that. Mothers, because even with this issue, with this law being passed, I think it was more women that were horrified than anything else.
Yeah.
Because they're mothers, they feel for their children, they understand that this is devastating to children, and so they react this way. And I think mothers feel, and women are in a good place to even help the men understand how to work with children. We like to do what I tell you, and you know, we think that just the harsh voice and everything is going to do the job, but there's better ways of doing things, and women understand that. That's why we want to see more women get involved in this work of educating our children and helping children understand there's a better way of living.
And I believe that we should work on our relationships with our kids. You know, rules without relationship leads to rebellion.
That's very good. Yes. Rules without relationships
leads to rebellion.
Leads to rebellion.
You can't just have rules without love.
That's right.
You know, and your child's going to rebel. And you're like, but I'm giving my child everything. We have this, you know, rules and he must do it. No, if there's no love and there's no relationship, it's going to lead to rebellion.
Isn't that incredible, Michelle? Because our relationship with God, with Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, is based on love. So we know there's things, we have to live a certain way. We know there's the law of Christ that we have to follow. There's a value system, there's a moral code. We know all of those things, but it's not based on that. Yeah. It's based on our relationship with Jesus, which is a love relationship, not based on laws and all of those kind of things. So it's the love that's the most important thing.
And when you pour that love out, your child will be open. You'll be surprised when you are loving. Even if you hear the worst of things, when you address it with love, your child will be more open to receive from you. Child will want to honor you, wants to respect you. So it's so important.
And we come back to that problem of the many broken and dysfunctional families where there are no love. There is no love in these family units, in this environment. And children are fearful, they're abused, they're living in a dysfunctional where mom and dad maybe are fighting with each other, or they don't see their father. All of those issues come into play here. And again, it could move to the church where the church can use it. You know, Christians could adopt children. No, I'm not talking legally adopt, but just show children love, children that are troubled.
Be a spiritual mother or father.
Be a spiritual mother and father. And just reach out to young people and show them love and acceptance, and through that, be able to educate them.
Yeah, it works. I have many spiritual children, many girls that have a mom and a dad, but I'm still a spiritual mother to them. They feel open to speak to me. They feel comfortable. They feel that love. They feel that I will not judge them or condemn them. And often they sit with that. What would you think of me? That judgment, that condemnation. So it's so important that you handle it with love, even if you're shocked. Okay, you've done this. Let's move forward from here and show them the better way. So
because there is a better way.
There's always a better way. God's way.
God's way is always the better way. Michelle, I want to thank you once again.
Thank you
for coming in and talking to us, your heart for children, your understanding as a mother and as a pastor. It's very important. And we're talking about this law amendment to the Sexual Offences Act that was signed by the president. It is now law in this country that sexual relationships between children in the age group 12 to 16 is now legal. It's decriminalised. It sends out a green light to children that it's okay. But we have to take up this challenge as the church, Michelle, as you were saying. We have to take it up. We have to send out the message that there is a better way. Children, be careful of the choices you make. There are complications, there are consequences, there's implications. Think about what you do. And it's again a challenge to the church. We need the church to rise up in this nation to proclaim the truth of God's word, to strengthen the family unit, so that all of us can be blessed in Jesus' name. Good night. That's our program for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Please visit our website at familypolicyinstitute.com and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. This is my primary method of communicating with you, so please subscribe today. If you have any comments or suggestions for the show, please write to us at info@familypolicyinstitute.com. We value your comments and your input. Please also remember that the latest edition of Joy Magazine is now on sale in retail stores right across the country. Make sure you get your copy. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you for joining us tonight. God bless you, and remember to keep standing.